welcome to the first Critical K-pop YouTube video. I'm your host for this little excursion, Mina, and let's talk about Girl Crush and why it feels so stagnant nowadays. Quick disclaimer, the following discussion contains many references to a very binary definition of gender, and the idea of target audiences existing along that same gender binary. You, dear audience, can like or stan any group regardless of how you self-identify, and as you should. That being said, the discussion is housed along the gender binary due to how inflexible the industry can be when making marketing decisions. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. First and foremost, let's set the stage. K-pop has always had an interesting relationship with female empowerment and the expressions of femininity that get projected through their idols. Back in the days of Gen 2, two concepts truly stood out for girl groups: idols, in the traditional sense of the word, and Girl Crush, the more traditionally accepted forms of what it means to be feminine in a patriarchal society being addressed by vast majority of groups in the idol category. While both still aligned with Korean beauty standards and were designed to appeal to male audiences, as K-pop groups exist on very firmly gendered lines, there are some intrinsic differences between an idol and a Girl Crush idol. The representation of a traditional idol ranged from cute to sexy to somewhere in between. The sexier concepts leaned heavily into poses, chicness, and overt pandering to the male audience with what was on trend for beauty at that time. Typically, this was long hair, S-lines, high heels, and short dresses. Idols in this category represented the cool modern woman that every man wants a shot at. This is where we get concepts such as AOA's miniskirt, Sistars Alone, etc. While the more cute, innocent, and fresh concept was marketed towards traditional expressions of quote-unquote the girl next door by highlighting soft, cute, energetic images with pastels, soft materials, and visual appeals to innocence. Think along the lines of Girls' Generation's G or Secret's Shy Boy. In contrast, Girl Crush emphasized strength, ferocity, and coolness by blending masculine and feminine visuals to highlight interesting styles that deviated from what the ideal was being portrayed as. This dichotomy of the girl's girl versus the ideal female idol was intensely divisive throughout second-gen K-pop, and truthfully, it extended beyond the idea of cute versus not. Many female idol concepts were actually a blend between those concepts. Agencies would frequently choose to highlight sexiness or cuteness, both being paramount to the male gaze they sought to attract, and the weird and bombastic aspects of Girl Crush to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. This in turn created the two competing Gen 2 queens, Girls' Generation and 21. These two groups were the frameworks off of which subsequent K-pop generations built and curated their girl groups' images. As cliche as this may sound, in order to properly understand the progression of Girl Crush and the impact it has on fourth generation K-pop, we must first define it. Girl Crush, first and foremost, exists to appeal to all audiences in order to captivate the audience traditionally least involved in girl group standing: young women. This is because it was created to launch a girl group that YG was convinced would not appeal to men due to their not fitting Korea's beauty standards. But I'll get back to that in a moment. I have beef with YG. Girl Crush is designed to be intuitive and empowering for those women who feel disenfranchised by the beauty standard or maybe just different from society's acceptable form of being feminine to find idols that they can relate to. It empowers the female viewer to aspire to be like the girls presented in this concept in order to create that parasocial bond between idols and audience. This is done by creating strong groups of women who could dominate these bright, bombastic, loud, fashion-forward concepts without it feeling like too much of a costume. The Girl Crush sound relies heavily on aesthetics, in a similar way as its antithesis does, but instead focuses on the subjective hardness of those aesthetics, not the soft and feminine aspects. In order to be a Girl Crush song, a song has to be bubblegum enough to appeal to the masses, but project an edge of badass, unapologetic girl power. This is generally achieved through the lyrics and the visuals. Now, why is this attractive? Or, at the very least, supposed to be more attractive to young women than the other more cute or sexy concept groups? Especially when, of course, those groups do have their own female fans. The short answer is that it is inherently designed to be less reliant on the male gaze while still profiting off of it. To see female idols who the industry has built up as parasocial vessels through which men can achieve the perfect wife and are encouraged to form these bonds with, express things like power and self-identity outside of that male gaze is inherently captivating for the young woman. And yes, boy groups do also experience a very similar form of parasocial projection. That's why K-pop groups, both girl groups and boy groups, marketing exists across gendered lines. The idea is to attract those that do not identify as that gender and get them to stan. When talking about trying to attract primarily an audience that identifies the same way as the idols themselves, there is a shift in the focal point and marketing. In an age where many young women seek to define themselves as individuals outside of their gender and the roles set forth for them by society, Girl Crush is not only an outlet for inspiration, it's a method of parasocial self-exploration through projection. The idea is for women and young girls, the target audience for Girl Crush, to see themselves, their struggles, and their power in the female idols in the Girl Crush concepts. As a result, the audience will not only empathize with and relate to the idols, thus building a strong parasocial relationship, but begin to explore themselves through following along with these concepts as the group does. This creates audience buy-in and a deep connection. Inherently, Girl Crush as a concept is a method of being able to see representations of female power and the average independent women in female idols, which at times can be rare due to the tropes the entertainment industry demands of them. Girl Crush is, as a concept, a genre that exists within the acceptable ranges of female empowerment. They are still being objectified within Girl Crush and being marketed as feminine in the traditional sense, while subverting inherent tropes within the constructs of what a female empowerment anthem or girl group should be. This can most readily be seen in how Girl Crush is marketed. Girl Crush is seen as a form of embracing the dual expression of traditionally masculine energy through methods in which boy groups are promoted in a way that promotes traditional femininity and power. This adds a mesmerizing quality to the overall production that not only attracts female attention, but promotes the concept as a method of self-exploration within societal norms. Girl Crush often revolves around the question of, is it acceptable to be me in a society that says I should follow these strict gender roles? The answer is always and unequivocally yes. As such, the visuals, even down to the dances, are powerful and filled with feminine energy, but often take a more androgynous spin. The oftentimes 3 to 4 inch heels are replaced with Doc Martens and combat boots. The more delicate or cutesy movements are replaced with hard-hitting intensity. Thus, creates the initial conflict between the idea of being desirable in the male gaze, cute, sexy, acceptably feminine, versus ugly, powerful, androgynous, in a society that prizes what is considered to be traditionally feminine. It is important to note that even though a lot of the girls in Girl Crush were described as ugly, they never have been and they never will be. These negative descriptors given to them by antis, netizens, and even their own agencies have always been coming from a standpoint of the very rigid beauty standard, one that is almost impossible to live up to. A sentiment that many women who are actively being compared to the female idols in these concepts, or even just female celebrities, can relate to. This is a main source of the ultimate attraction to Girl Crush. Understanding that while one may have flaws, there is power in loving oneself and in creating an image that can effectively compete with the boys. This is where a lot of the Gen 2 Girl Crush concepts drew from their masculine boy group counterparts, both in using similar aesthetics and movements while retaining certain inherent and indisputable aspects of traditional femininity. Though the complexity of the choreography is typically unchanged from concept to concept, the way it is performed and the way the girls themselves are coached to perform it is inherently different. Essentially, Girl Crush is both a concept and a category defined by its compromises, masked by subversions. Though made for women in order to market and empower women to gain a female audience, it is still produced predominantly by a male-dominated industry. There is an assumption being made by these predominantly male executives as to what women want to see and how to effectively sell female empowerment in a palatable, socially acceptable way that will still garner the male attention. This type of marketing creates a feedback loop within Girl Crush concepts that, while calling into question certain aspects of the standards set forth for women and their self-image, ultimately still capitalizes off of the insecurities of the very women they seek to empower. So now that we've defined girl crush and explained some of the complexities behind it, let's take a look at the trajectory of girl crush in Gen 4 and the evolution it's experienced. From YG's ugly girl group concept that created the icons that were, and still are, to anyone, arose the whole concept of girl crush. And its foundation is entirely based on the idea that these 4 girls in 21 were ugly or unattractive, and therefore were allowed to explore certain vulnerabilities, fashion, and aspects of themselves that are seen as less desirable than their picture-perfect counterparts. This is most readily apparent on 21's self-titled EP, which is seen as one of the most authentic expressions of the girl crush concept from the originators of it. On that album are both I Am the Best and Ugly, both of these songs being the strongest representation of girl crush to come in K-pop. The reason why the EP hits so hard is because of the way it is explored visually and performance-wise. It touches on insecurities that the singers themselves face in the hyper-scrutinized microcosm that is the K-entertainment industry. That microcosm being analogous to the wider society's perception of women, and then empowers them to use those same elements of scrutiny. This type of internal analysis that is presented within both of those songs is an anthem of unity and understanding that crosses firmly gendered lines within K-pop, in order to create a song and sound that anyone can truly relate to. As authentic as these songs are, however, it is important to remember what it all stems from, as this is where the marketing tactics come into play and begin to expand beyond the original scope of girl crush. This will probably anger quite a few people, but I am going to argue that the evolution of flexing in songs is not inherently girl crush, and instead is part of the reason why people feel it's stagnant. While a lot of Gen 3 and Gen 4 groups do draw on many elements of original girl crush concepts, it has become fused with the flexing and competitive nature that a lot of the Western female empowerment anthems provide. Competition between women, look at you, now look at me, is not the same type of empowerment. It is instead an extension of the original desire to market the idol fantasy and consequently the agency that these women have as an immature form of self-expression. The current iteration of girl crush and what the agencies view as girl crush has become intensely out of touch with what had originally attracted the fans to it in the first place: the authenticity and the exploration of different forms of self. At present, this marketing is simply the negative extension of taking that concept of girl crush and trying to make it more marketable, as though women being empowered, fashion-forward, and unapologetically themselves is something to be perceived as negative or childish. That is the nature of the insidious marketing, because it takes the vulnerabilities, the reclaiming of power, and the genuine excitement in finding oneself inherent to all girl crush songs, and reduces it down to flexing, aesthetics, and catchy one-liners. As hollow as this may sound given the previous statement, we at Critical K-pop quite enjoy girl crush. It is a form of music and expression that many can and should find relatability or solace in. Despite this connection, it is important to understand how the way that girl crush was created and subsequently evolved is inherently inorganic and exploitative. Because regardless of the concept, the idols are always designed to be Instagram perfect and fit within the beauty standards they're critiquing, while at the same time professing their superiority. Because the idols in Girl Crush are female presenting, they must at the end of the day always appeal to men. As Girl Crush is a moneymaker, it cannot be too much. There are predefined, acceptable parameters even within Girl Crush itself that are set forth for the idols to follow both in lyrics and visuals. This is why at times concepts can seem repetitive, something that Girl Crush groups across the generations have fallen victim to criticism for, from 4 Minute to Everglow. A common complaint in the current generation of K-pop is that there is an oversaturation of the market, especially in terms of Girl Crush concepts. This makes it so that each iteration of the concept, even if done by a new group and regardless of the authenticity behind it, seem like a hollow marketing ploy. Additionally, many fans, us included, are frustrated with agencies portraying female talent, as well as the explorations of said female talent's self-expression, as being for aesthetics and formulaic. This being said, there is still a place in the market for Girl Crush, as many connect to it, but the charm, mystique, and power of the genre has been hidden under the limits of preset elements of acceptability. So, where do we go from here? There will need to be a stylistic shift within the genre and concept that opens the door to other means of expression of the girl crush concept. We need more than just flexing anthems. If we want to have any hope of recapturing the hearts of girl crush fans, there needs to be a change. Without it, the genre feels stagnant and will continue to fall short of its intended impact. That being said, those are our thoughts about it. We would love to hear yours as well. Please leave a comment down below on your thoughts about girl crush and join in on the discussion. If this type of critical commentary interests you or you like K-pop song reviews, please drop us a like and subscribe to our channel.